Let's talk about Anatomy of a Fall. Now, this is getting a lot of Oscar buzz. It did win the Palme d'Or at Cannes this year, but France did not submit it for Best Foreign Film consideration with the Oscars. It submitted The Taste of Things instead, starring Juliette Binoche. So it has that hurdle. I think the performances were great, particularly from Sandra Huller and Milo Machado Graner. I think they delivered great performances, but as far as Best Picture this year, when we have Oppenheimer, Barbie, Origins, possibly American Fiction, The Color Purple, Across the Spider-Verse, Past Lives, Killers of the Flower Moon, this is a tight year. Zone of interest. I don't think that this movie, after having seen it, rises to the level of Best Picture. Not this year. I think the better chance was Best Foreign Film. Now let me get into what the film is about if you haven't checked it out yet. So Sandra Huller plays a long-suffering wife. She and her husband, they are somewhat estranged, even though they're living together. They are staying together because they have a son who is partially blind. Now they resent each other. He resents her because his career has gone south. He wanted to be a writer. She didn't support him from his perspective. She resents him because she blames him for her son's blindness from an accident. So they resent each other. The movie opens with Sandra Huller's character being interviewed by one of her students. And to run the guest out of the house, her husband is blasting this music on loop, 50 Cent's PIMP, blasting it on loop. It's so obnoxious, not just to her guests, but to us in the audience. It's very obnoxious. We don't get to see him on screen until we see him as a corpse. We don't get to see him on screen for half of the movie. For half of the movie, we don't even get an intimate understanding of who he is other than how he blasted this music and from recordings that he secretly recorded his wife and their struggling relationship. So we don't know him, but we know he's obnoxious. So that's one thing. We don't like the victim, or at least I did it. With Sandra Huller, the reason why I didn't respond to her character is because of the premise and how the rest of the story unfolds. So her son, again, partially blind, he and the dog, his CNI dog, they go for a walk. They're away from the house. What's happening at the house, we don't know. We try to piece it together from testimony. But when he and the dog come back from walking, his dad is dead. Blood blanketing the snow. Dad's dead. Mom comes down. Her reaction is suspect. Okay. The story unfolds reenacting what possibly happened. Did she push him to his death, or did he unalive himself because of the guilt he felt for causing his son's blindness? Why I was so disconnected from the film in a way that other people might find that this is Best Picture worthy is because we don't like the characters. I didn't like Sandra Huller's character because her son, her young son, finds his dad bloodied and dead. She is so steely and cold and unemotional. This is a foreign film. There's English in it because Sandra Huller's character speaks English. She's British. Her husband was French. Her son speaks French. So there is English in it, but for the most part, we're watching subtitles. Now that would have been perfectly fine if the tension had elevated or built to anything, but the tension doesn't build to anything. This is really about relationships for many of the people we don't like. I didn't feel good about Sandra Huller's character because of how she responded to the trauma of her son. And then he is obnoxious, playing this music to drain out a conversation his wife is having. And so in that way, I just felt like a juror looking at evidence I really didn't care about because I didn't like the characters. So you have such a barrier. It's a talkie, it's a slow burn, the characters are not likable, and the story doesn't build to any serious tension. Unlike The Staircase, that miniseries, there was always tension. The characters were likable even if they were bad. This just felt like a documentary or like court testimony that just took too long to get anywhere. At any rate, Anatomy of a Fall is in limited release now. I think it would be better to wait for this to be on digital because of all of those hurdles.